And I'm going to jump with something else because we have a couple different things going on. So I'm going to I'm just going to pass the baton and let her go for it.
Alrighty. I'm hoping we can all hear me. It's always a little bit weird here not to have a big audience because you're all not on the Zoom meeting with me. But let's go. Welcome to my presentation on including marginalized communities in AAC design. My name is Lily Conine and my pronouns are she, her. And we're just gonna get going because we're a couple minutes late. So just to talk about accessibility, captions, hopefully you can use the auto captions on YouTube. There's not a transcript currently available. I might try to cut something together afterwards or not. There is a second copy of the slides in Open Dyslexic, which is a dyslexia-friendly font. I'm not using it for my main presentation because it's a little bit difficult for me, but there should be that on in the link to the session. And the file has full alt text and images will be described out loud during the presentation as well if they're relevant to the content. I did try to get the read order pretty good for a screen reader, but I can't guarantee because I don't have a screen reader to run through on my computer. Who am I? I'm wearing the same shirt as the picture, which I realized in the last second. The picture is of me. I'm a white woman with medium length brown hair. I am a part-time AAC user. I use an Accent 800 with Unity 84 sequenced. I would say I use it on average about 50% of the time, but in the past couple of months, it's been as little as 10%. I don't know, I'm in a weird verbal period. I'm a graduate student in the Assistive Technology and Human Services program at CSUN, and I'm graduating with the rest of cohort 10 this December with my master's degree. Shoot jobs my way. I'm also a newlywed. I was actually just married this past Saturday, so this is my conference honeymoon. I have my virtual background to prove it. In fact, I am at home in my bedroom. And I was named Lily Huston prior to my wedding, so that's what's on the schedule and on a lot of my old stuff. I am now Lily Conine. And if I'm talking about marginalized communities, it's important to talk about my identity and my privileges and marginalizations to the degree I'm comfortable with. I'm a white cisgender working class, US born, US citizen. I'm also a member of the LGBTQ plus community, disabled, and a woman. And within disability, I'm autistic and I have chronic illness and mental illness. So it is important to name those. It also is important not to expect to hear about people's marginalization and trauma in order to listen to them. Some things are really hard to talk about, and I have this picture of the Thanksgiving table because that's what I think about. As I think about at Thanksgiving, it's not appropriate to bring up money, sex, politics, or religion. And it's a rule that's kept my family going pretty well, but it's not a good rule for your life. And it can feel like that's the rule at work. And in many workplaces, it is an unspoken rule, but we cannot follow it because the choice to not talk about those things and act like they don't influence our life is a privilege. Sex, money, politics, religion keeps people quite literally alive and also living good or bad lives based on the way their marginalization and privilege influence them. A marginalized community is defined in this recent research paper as such. Marginalized communities are those excluded from mainstream economic, educational, and/or cultural life. Examples of marginalized population include, but are not limited to, groups excluded due to race, gender identity, sexual orientation, age, physical ability, language, and/or immigration status. Marginalization occurs due to unequal power relationships between social groups. I want to draw attention to that unequal power relationship because one place that a relationship like that can show up is between a professional and a client. And it isn't a marginalized community, like clients aren't a coherent social group. Cohesive is the word I meant, cohesive social group. But therapists tend to underestimate that power relationship. They can think, oh, someone would bring up if words needed to be added or if they felt alienated by their AAC. Whereas a client is thinking, this person's an authority who I don't want to upset, or they're thinking, if I were allowed to add things or if I should add these things, I'd be told about it. I'm going to start by going over some current issues in AAC with the inclusion of marginalized communities and some potential solutions. And I'm choosing to take a lens that's a bit more community-wide. So I'm not going to be talking about changes you can go make to an AAC device right now. I'm talking about systematic changes that need to happen to the way that we design AAC. I'm going to start by talking about class. Economic class has a really complex interaction with many other marginalized identities. In general, marginalized people tend to have less money and less access to opportunities to make money or social climb. This severely limits access to AAC, and it must be a consideration in AAC development because people in poverty are also more likely to have disabilities. The number one barrier I see to AAC is always cost. And it makes lower cost AAC apps, to me, I hold them to a higher standard because when I'm recommending AAC to someone and they say, well, it needs to be free. Like, well, it can't be free, but the cheapest options I have for you are these two apps. Typically, I'll recommend Cough Drop and Snap Core. And Snap Core and Cough Drop don't do a great job on marginalized identities. I'm going to start with race. In the background, there's a picture of the Core 60 layout from Cough Drop. And every square that includes a picture of a person is either white or it's a stick figure in which the fill-in color of the stick figure is quite literally white, but not like a white person's skin color. All AAC apps that I know of follow a white default. The default figure is a white person with white facial features, white hair type, etc. Symbol sticks-based apps have some options. So Proloquo to Go and Touch Chat, you can change to there's 5 different skin colors that you could change every single main character in the app to. Touch Chat also has a randomization option, which I'll show. And interestingly, time has not really improved this factor in AAC apps. The original MinSpeak symbols are really good, in my opinion. While there's not, let me explain this. You can't change an individual icon to a different skin color. The mix is very good. And really uniquely, even the black and white pictures have clearly non-white facial features for some of them. For example, the he has a wide nose and clearly black hair. That's really cool. I think that's evidence that we could be doing this now, especially as Unity and LAMP, when they added more symbols, they're now all white people again in those secondary pages underneath the main MinSpeak symbols. Ways we could change this is for more apps to have that ability to change the skin color of every icon or randomize the skin colors of every icon, as well as the ability to change specific symbols to different skin colors. That's important because you might want to make the icon for mom Asian and the icon for dad Black. Or you might want to be able to make icons for specific teachers. I know the habit most people have is to take pictures for specific people, but especially if you have any sort of vision issue, having some be pictures and some be icons can be really visually difficult. It certainly is for me, and I don't have any visual issues. The other thing is, even in that Proloquo and Touch Chat, the symbols are not designed for the color to be a dark skin. And so when you toggle it all to a different color, thank you, Brian, in the Slack. If you toggle it all to a different color, for example, on this on this page, even in Cough Drop, you can see like the eyes are black dots. So if you make the skin color very dark, the contrast isn't very good. Race deserves a second slide. Let's think about the difference between randomization and changing the overall color of the whole app. In many cases, randomization is going to be more accurate to what a community looks like and to what the United States look like, most European countries. You can see on the left, there's touch chat, which has been randomized. It isn't true randomization in that if you hit it again, it's always the same. It doesn't like switch to a different set of random ones. However, some communities have mostly people of one color, and it might make more sense to just switch everything to one or switch everything to the color of the person using it because, you know, most of the verbs are going to be them talking about themselves. Another thing is to look at the apps that do have mixed skin colors for icons and look at the words they belong to. Someone's saying they're having troubles with the slides. If someone could look at that, that would be great. Here on the left, the feelings page of Snap Core has quite a lot of feelings. I have a layout that is, I think, 10 across. So there's about 60 feelings on this page. And of them, 2 are the darkest skin color that Snap Core offers, and it's tired and terrible. So quite literally no positive emotions in this dark skin tone. And I'm sure they didn't intend that, but you need to look at it. And then race isn't only skin color. And this is something that bothers me with the symbol sticks, being able to just switch the color, is the hair types remain white. The body types remain thin, which isn't the default for some races. And the vocabulary words don't get changed when you toggle it. The slang words, the chat words, the types of grammar configurations that are allowed, especially in apps with predictive grammar like touch chat. I'm going to talk about ethnicity, which is different. When I do this slide, I always panic about my battery because I took the screenshot when my iPad was at 13% battery. Ethnicity can affect, among other things, your clothing, the types of buildings that are around you, the celebrations you engage in, the voice you have, and what foods you eat. And when I talk celebrations, I'm only talking about non-religious celebrations in this context. Like Independence Days are often celebrated by people, even if they've immigrated, they celebrate their original Independence Day. Buildings, if you think about the icons for what a home looks like, it's very much that classic white child, you know, house with the triangle roof. Voices, we don't need to assume that we want accented-less voice, you know, that we want everyone speaking with the standard American English accent if that doesn't reflect their community. I want to look at food because I see this problem in almost every app. There is a folder for Mexican food, and this image is showing lamp, which has, this isn't the full page, but I think there's like maybe 10 food symbols. So a lot of room to be putting more in here for Mexican food. And there is nacho, salsa, burrito, enchilada, guacamole, and I think hidden behind is maybe taco. Oh no, it's refried. This is a Taco Bell menu. This isn't like the actual food that people from that culture eat. This is a restaurant order, and it extends to the Chinese food page. So these foods need to be about the people in the culture who eat them, not about making a takeout order. Voice options need to be customizable to different accents. And the symbol diversity needs to be such that you can at least change images to have cultural clothing, different buildings, but also to have cultural clothing mixed in within the clothing, the symbols where people are wearing clothing is meaningful. And to have words like hijab on the clothing page would make a big difference. Religion. As race has a white default, religion has a Christian default in most apps. The image for the religion page is often a big cross and then some other little things, or like a big church and then some other little things. But even when it's mixed on the page, to the left here, I have the Snap Core religion page. It includes some generic terms like what am I going to wear, where are we going, who's going, why are we going. And then it has Sunday as the only day of the week on the page. So that's a Christian default. Amen, hallelujah, peace be with you, communion. It has someone standing at a pulpit for I like the talk, which is in its own way Christian. For like to pray, the symbol is the two hands together, which is the way many people pray, but doesn't represent, for example, praying with a prayer mat. And not to say that should be the symbol, but that should be an option or on one of the many words on this page, phrases on this page about prayer. We also have to think about daily practices versus special practices. Special practices being maybe holidays or what you do when someone dies or at a wedding versus daily practices. Because when I see non-Christian religions incorporated, it's often only holidays and not those sort of daily practices. To improve this, we need AAC apps to include the most common religions equally. And if that's overwhelming, or if you want less common religions included, extra customization to be able to, when you set up the vocabulary to say, add these words for Baha'i religion. One thing I love about Cough Drop is those extra pages that you can just add in from the community, from the cloud, and to have pages like that were sanctioned and within other apps as well would be wonderful. And then as always, people from that marginalized community need to be in on the design. Otherwise, you're going to get a religion page that treats Hanukkah like the most important Jewish religious holiday, which just isn't true. Regarding LGBTQ plus community, that's something I think we don't think as much about with AAC, and it isn't as big. There are not as many things that need to get changed, but there are a lot of things. Family and relationship symbols is one I struggle with a lot. If I want a symbol saying wife, so I can say, I'm the wife of so-and-so, it is a woman standing next to a man. Depending on the symbol set, there's a bit more of a mix that you could choose, but families are always, a nuclear family. And symbols for just the regular symbols have a very clear demarcation between boy symbols and girl symbols, especially in the children, I've noticed. The stick figures aren't particularly clear, but also, they don't have long hair, do they? Which is typically the way in symbols we say things are women. Voices is something a lot of trans AAC users struggle with. There are not gender neutral voices available. On the left here, I have the a cappella voices. I think this is in Proloquo, but it looks the same on most apps. There are child voices, which you can tell the gender by the name. There are adult voices, which either say female adult or male adult. And then there are the specialty voices. On this, you can see Little Creature, which is a Yoda voice, and then not in the image is Old Man, which is an old man voice. And I love to play with those. They're silly, but it feels really a little bit insulting in my heart. I get a little like, oof, that the time was taken to make those voices when you could have very easily just thrown in a couple gender neutral sounding voices. Names for common LGBTQIA identities aren't included. I think it's Snap Core where I was very surprised to find gay, bi, transgender were all included, but not lesbian. And once again, I don't think that was an intentional choice, but with most apps, it seems like those were just like sprinkled in, like they just picked a couple ones that they thought of without being very intentional. So you see apps with lesbian and gay or with gay and trans, and it's sort of randomly chosen. And then pronouns. Shout out to Proloquo to Go for recently adding some neo-pronouns. That's one part. The other is support for singular they. And mostly that's supported with the existing they vocabulary. The picture is of a group of people, and I wish we could have that a little altered, but it's fine. The one thing is to be able to say themself instead of themselves is not native to most apps. And it gets me. It gets me. I always go to say it and then it's not there. So to improve this, we do need common neo-pronouns incorporated. So that's ze, zir, ze, here, typically. At least the basic identities listed. So that the list I have here is two-spirit, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual, aromantic. That, if you're not in the community, you're like, oh, that's a lot of letters, but like that's a pretty basic list. Oh, and non-binary. It doesn't usually go in the acronym because it's under trans, but non-binary. The ability to have genderless voices, or to have one voice that you can change so many settings on that you can get it sounding genderless, and just a bigger variety of symbols. Almost all of these bigger variety of symbols is helpful. And that can seem daunting, but if you think of, Boardmaker, PCS comes out with new symbols every week. Symbol Sticks comes out with new symbols every week because of News to You. So it's not like new symbols aren't being developed. And disability. This is a really unique category because all AAC users fall into the category. And even so, common equipment words aren't usually included. Stander, walker, gait trainer. I never see anything for feeding tube users. And even the most common disabilities that AAC users have aren't listed. CP, I don't ever see. On the top left, you can see I've searched autism in Proloquo to Go. This is the advanced vocabulary in Crescendo, so all the words should be included. It is not included. It does suggest a place that it might go, and the suggestion is help, something's wrong, which super insulting, but also just kind of bizarre. Like, am I gonna say, help, I'm autistic? Like it just showed up. The image is also a ribbon with the puzzle piece symbols on it, which the autistic community has been protesting the puzzle piece for years. It couldn't be clearer that an autistic person was not in on this design. Also to the left, I have a screenshot of Pod, which is, I'm using the Compass app, but I like it because it shows this blank square that has written in it, add gender specific body parts. And I think that's really important. I'm glad they put that, but I also think all the body parts should be in there for everyone. And I will get into that on the next slide. But to start here, what's needed is for disabled people to be involved in development of the products that we use every day, and for us to be compensated for our labor. That's one of the things I see most often on Facebook, because I'm in so many AAC groups, is AAC users essentially creating new features, giving troubleshooting, helping each other with troubleshooting for these apps that are paid. People are making money off our labor that we are not making money off of when most of us are in poverty. These things I've listed as other difficult topics to consider are kind of secretly about disability. I've listed sex for pleasure, abuse, and politics. And I say these are secretly about disability because they all stem from infantilization of disabled people. We are treated like children. And so apps and devices are developed assuming that we're not going to talk about these topics, even though by simple math, we spend more of our life as adults than children. And really, I was talking about all of these things when I was 11 or 12, so way more of our lives wanting to talk about these topics than not. And disabled people are far more likely to be abused. So to remove those words because they might, yell a naughty word during class, or because you don't think they should be talking about sex for pleasure, results in real danger, as well as the danger of just having kind of an unhappy relationship where you can't talk about, what you're unsatisfied. It can be really tempting to believe that you can make these edits as needed. And I certainly have made these edits. If I have a user who's uses tube feeding, I add the parts, I add their formula words, whatever. But there's really no such thing as needed edits for marginalization because they are always needed. I have a background in linguistics. The language we use changes the way we see the world. And for AAC users, they also often have a set of pictures on their device, those symbols that they see more than any other pictures. What are they telling us about the way the world is when I see those words in those pictures, about who the default is, what the correct way is to speak and not speak, what I'm allowed to talk about and not allowed to talk about? The other thing is some edits truly can't be made. I have not figured out a way on any app besides Snapcore to change the skin color of individual icons so that they can match a user's family. Snapcore, you can do it, but often you're changing the symbol to a completely different symbol. So it doesn't match if, for example, multiple people in a classroom are using the same device and you'd like to be familiar with it to model. Finally, you shouldn't have to. If you're a user, if you're a professional, if you're not an app or device developer, this isn't your job and it's taking time away from your job. If I work in a low-income school district with more people of color in it, and I'm spending a ton of time on editing each person's app to fit them the best, that's taking away service minutes. At the very least, it's taking away my energy from serving them. So they're just disadvantaged in a different way. A quick recap, some areas of change are in symbol design, vocabulary choice, app customization options, voices, and price. I want to bring up these arenas because they're really all different people. The people designing symbols are different from the people designing vocabularies, are different from the people programming apps, are different from the people who design voices, and are often different from the people who do financial planning for apps and for companies, especially big companies like PRC and Tobii Dynavox and Proliquo. Assistiveware, couldn't remember the name. So how do we create these changes? There are many ways for things to change. There are individual changes. There are societal changes. If we had a society that didn't have a Christian default, neither would our apps. I'm specifically talking about how to change AAC design and assistive technology design. And it's because I think it's possible and because I think it's necessary to create truly meaningful change. And there are more and less effective ways to do that. I don't want to roast these less effective ways because they're far better than nothing, but I do want to talk about it. We can make personal efforts. These are the less effective ways. We can make personal efforts. I can decide to go change the devices that I have. I can decide to follow more marginalized people, go to more conference presentations. I can encourage my friends, my SLP buddies, my colleagues to also make these changes. I can show my team ideas from Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. I can suggest they follow certain people on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. And something I've seen a lot recently is people creating new products. So new AAC apps that have more inclusive symbol design, or putting together teachers pay teachers guides or guides on their website for how to edit someone's app, or low-tech boards that have more inclusive design, and selling those for a profit. Those all do something, but more effective is a collective effort coming together as a community to demand certain things from AAC developers. Say, before you take other steps, we need you to take this one. And instead of encouraging my friends, my colleagues, I want to encourage influential people to make changes. As a school SLP, that might mean going to the head of special education or the superintendent and saying we need time and funds to do this. Not just following marginalized people and listening to them, but adding them to your team and treating them either as an equal member or above you as a member when talking about marginalization. And instead of creating new products, fix existing products. If I'm an existing lamp user and I need to pick up a whole new product to be respected, that's not good, and it's not financially feasible. It's also just reinventing the wheel, which we don't need to do if the people currently in charge of the wheel take the right steps. The most effective way to create change, however, is to be someone who is already in an influential role. Recognize your influence and initiate that organizational change yourself. People in the most influential roles in the world, the CEO of the biggest company will say, well, I'm beholden to my stakeholders, or, I would be, our stocks would drop if I did this. And the same can happen as an individual in a smaller role. Say you're the most experienced SLP in your district. Think, well, I can't really do anything without funding, without the principal's approval. Or, you're the SLP and you say, well, I can't do anything because I'm not the head SLP. Well, you're above the SLPAs. Can you instruct them to do certain things? Can you make certain changes on your own? As the song says, if you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself. Who has leadership roles? Who's in your IEP team? Who has access to editing? Your IEP team, are you including multiple family members? Would that help? Are you locking family members out of editing? I see this happen because family members make sort of random edits that mess up the motor plan that don't follow core vocabulary. What if you taught them about those things instead, or kept a list of words? You don't know what the right words are to add. What apps and devices are you recommending? There are wonderful apps, wonderful devices that I feel really guilty recommending to people of color. You need to at least be thinking about that. If you're making a choice between two apps that are about equal, why aren't you looking at diversity? And when in the process are you thinking about diversity? Are you going in trying to figure out what's the best match for someone's culture? Or is it a consideration only once someone is having trouble adopting or you're not being able to engage the family? Where are you meeting? First of all, where in a more cerebral sense, like what time, for example, is it during someone's workday? Are you using complex vocabulary? Do you need an interpreter? But also where physically? Is it hard to get there on the bus? Are you meeting in a speech room where you're an authority or in a doctor office looking place? Why are you making the decisions you make? We all make decisions based off our background, and to try to be agnostic about it, to think, oh, I'm gonna make sure I push my background back. Isn't actually helpful because you're just denying your insight as to what choices you might be making from your background. Something I notice backgrounds often influences how important you think something is. You might say, well, yeah, we probably should add a word for that food, but you can always describe it using the existing words. And you hold descriptive teaching as more important than adding the cultural vocabulary. And that's a judgment you're making from your background. And finally, how do I start making big changes? What's one step I can take right now to start making change and not just learn about how to make change? Finally, I don't want to pretend that individual efforts don't matter, because you have clients now, you have family members now, and you can't wait for organizational change to happen. So here's 4 arenas and a couple of steps. First of all, attend tomorrow's session, Diverse and Inclusive Implementation of AAC, with Christina Royster, Jill DeBronstein, and Alma Partida. I'm super excited. I'm definitely going to be there to look at more practical inclusion. Secondly, ask clients and families about what words need to be added. I definitely suggest you put together some sort of survey or template for this. And ask about diversity in other conference sessions, especially from developers, but just in general. This next one is really big. Make a base template. So if you mostly use LAMP and Touch Chat, for example, in your practice, take one of those base vocabularies and just edit a template a little bit. Use that randomized skin color, add more words for common cultural foods in your area, common religions, and then use that as your starter template. Now, don't ignore other feature matching. Like if you make one for, the 60 word touch chat and 108 is more, more suitable. Don't use the 60. But in something like LAMP, for example, super easy. And it's not just about AAC. Look at the toys and games you use. Look at the books you use. Who do they represent? What do they teach people about the world? And could you have more engagement if you were using something else? Okay, and then I'm mostly done. I want to finish up with thinking about, and those of us who are in the Slack, identify something you can do immediately to make change. And if you're not a professional, identify a change that would impact you. Personally, support for singular they would be a huge impact to me, as would common words about autism, both autism and autistic, but also stimming, meltdown, those sorts of words automatically being included because so many AAC users are autistic. Okay, I'm gonna hang out in the Slack now. As people are typing, I'm going to say one change I'm going to make as someone who often consults with new AAC users is put together a feature matching resource that includes how good each app does on these requirements, these diversity things. Oh, thank you. Brian's posted the survey link. I always want to know how I can do better. Thank you. I meant to say the whole reason I started thinking about this is people were asking me for the best apps. And I said, well, there's no one best app, but I'm gonna tell you about each one. And as I was telling them about each one, I was like, oof, oof, as I went looking for different features and didn't find them. Jenna says, my team already has a form we use to gather vocabulary the family would like to have added. I am going to immediately look at it and make some changes with this perspective. Yes, something I have been asking people when I look at adding words is to list the words they use to say, to approve of something, to disapprove of something, highs and buys also. Because they're, are we saying right on or are we saying jazzy? I don't know. I don't even know. I can't understand people 6 years younger than me. I mean, asking people's peers is also a great strategy. I'm so glad I got through this on time. By the way, last year, I think I was like running into the 55-minute line. So I made it. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you all think more about this. And I am going to go and relax for the first time since my wedding 4 days ago. Stop screen sharing. Okay, goodbye. Have a great, what today is it? Wednesday.
Thanks everyone for being here. Sorry about the craziness that was the beginning of all of this. It's been a crazy technical day for us. And thank you, Lily, for coming and sharing with us. It has been wonderful to hear what you have to say.